Hello, my name is Adil. For thousands of years, these small, sun-drenched islands in the heart of the Mediterranean have been a crossroads of civilizations, a sought-after prize for empires and a vital hub for trade. Here, in Malta, a story is etched not just in the honey-colored limestone of its buildings, but in something much smaller, something that has passed through the hands of countless generations, its coins. From the earliest days of simple barter to the unified currency of a continent, the story of Maltese coinage is a remarkable reflection of its turbulent and fascinating history. Each piece of metal, whether bronze, silver, or gold, tells a tale. It speaks of powerful rulers, of shifting allegiances, of devout faith, and of the everyday lives of the Maltese people. These are not merely tokens of exchange, they are miniature monuments, artifacts that carry the echoes of conquering armies, the prayers of devout knights, and the aspirations of a newly independent nation. They are tangible links to a past that is both uniquely Maltese and intrinsically connected to the wider sweep of European and Mediterranean history. So I invite you to join me on this extraordinary journey. We will travel back through the millennia, uncovering the secrets held within these small metallic objects. We will explore how each new ruler and each new era left its indelible mark, transforming the very currency that flowed through the island's bustling ports and quiet villages. This is the story of Malta, told not through words on a page, but through the currency that has defined its economic and cultural life for centuries. Our story begins long before the first coin was ever struck on these shores. In the mists of prehistory, the earliest inhabitants of Malta lived in a world without currency. The magnificent temples they erected, older than the pyramids of Egypt, stand as silent witnesses to a complex society. Here, exchange was a direct and personal affair. Life's necessities, grain, tools, perhaps the fine pottery for which they were known, were traded through a system of barter. The value of an object was measured in its usefulness, its rarity, or the skill required to create it. It was a simple economy built on trust and mutual need, a fundamental human interaction that predates all forms of money. As millennia passed, the world around Malta began to change. The great seafaring civilizations of the Near East were on the move, and their influence rippled across the Mediterranean. The Phoenicians, master mariners and traders from what is now Lebanon, established outposts across the sea, and Malta, with its strategic harbors, was an irresistible stopping point. They brought with them not just their goods, their precious purple dyes, their glassware, and their textiles, but also a new concept of value. They introduced the idea of using weighed pieces of metal, fragments of silver and bronze, as a more standardized medium of exchange, a crucial step away from simple barter. This was a revolutionary moment. For the first time, value could be stored and transported in a compact, durable form. It was no longer necessary to trade a pot for a sack of wheat directly. Instead, one could sell the pot for a specific weight of silver, and then use that silver to buy wheat or anything else at a later time. While these were not yet coins in the true sense, they bore no official stamp or image. They laid the essential groundwork. The Phoenicians also brought with them the currencies of their vast trading network. Coins from distant cities in Greece, Persia, and their own homeland began to circulate in Malta, the first metallic whispers of a globalized economy. These foreign coins, though not Maltese in origin, were the first to jingle in the pockets of the island's inhabitants. They represented a connection to a wider, more complex world. Each coin was a tiny ambassador from a foreign power, a symbol of a distant king or a powerful city-state. For the local population, adapting to this new system must have been a profound shift. It marked the beginning of Malta's integration into the great economic currents of the ancient world, a role it was destined to play for centuries to come. The island was no longer an isolated outpost. It was becoming a node in a vibrant network of maritime commerce. The archaeological record from this period is rich with evidence of this burgeoning trade. Fragments of imported pottery, remnants of foreign goods, and of course the coins themselves, all paint a picture of a bustling, cosmopolitan society. The Phoenician influence was profound, shaping not only the island's economy but also its culture and language. They sowed the seeds of a monetary system, preparing the ground for the next great power that would arrive on these shores, and for the first time, produce a currency that the island could truly call its own. The age of barter was ending, and the age of the coin had begun. As Phoenician power waned, a new force rose from its ashes. Carthage, the great city-state in modern-day Tunisia, inherited its parent city's maritime empire, and with it, control of Malta. The Carthaginians were not merely visitors, they were settlers, and their presence marked a new chapter in the island's numismatic history. It was under their rule around the 4th century BC that the first coins were likely struck in Malta. These were typically made of bronze and bore symbols that were deeply meaningful to both the rulers and the ruled, a clever fusion of cultures designed to foster acceptance and facilitate trade. These early coins are fascinating documents. On one side, we might see the head of a goddess, perhaps Tanit, the chief deity of Carthage, her features rendered in the distinct Punic style. On the other, a horse's head or a palm tree, symbols synonymous with the Carthaginian Empire. But crucially, some of these coins also featured uniquely local symbols, such as the tripod, a possible link to the Temple of Apollo. This blending of Punic and Hellenistic elements shows a sophisticated understanding of cultural diplomacy. The coins were not just money, they were propaganda, reinforcing Carthaginian authority while acknowledging the island's own identity. The clash of titans that was the Punic Wars would inevitably draw Malta into its vortex. In 218 BC, the island fell to the rising power of Rome. The transition was swift, and with it came a complete overhaul of the island's currency. The Punic bronze coins were gradually replaced by the formidable currency of the Roman Republic and, later, the Empire. The silver denarius, the large bronze sestertius, and the golden aureus began to circulate, each coin bearing the unmistakable portrait of an emperor or a symbol of Roman might, such as the eagle or the she-wolf suckling Romulus and Remus. For nearly 7 centuries, Roman coinage was the lifeblood of the Maltese economy. It paid the soldiers garrisoned on the island, funded the construction of new buildings, and was used in the bustling markets where local produce, like the famed Maltese honey and textiles, was sold. The sheer volume and standardization of Roman currency connected Malta more deeply than ever before to a vast economic zone stretching from Britain to Mesopotamia. The head of Augustus, Nero, or Trajan, held in the hand of a Maltese farmer, was a constant, tangible reminder of the immense power that governed their lives from a distant capital. Intriguingly, under Roman rule, Malta was granted the status of a municipium, which allowed it a degree of local autonomy. This status is reflected in a unique series of bronze coins struck on the island itself during the 1st century BC. These coins are a remarkable testament to the island's special relationship with Rome. They often feature the inscription Melitus, or Meliteion, the Greek name for the island, alongside Roman deities like Juno or Proserpina. They represent a proud local identity flourishing under the umbrella of Roman imperial power, a theme that would recur throughout Malta's long history. These coins were both Roman and distinctly Maltese, a perfect metaphor for the island itself. With the slow decline and eventual collapse of the Western Roman Empire, the Mediterranean world fractured. Malta, caught in the geopolitical currents, found itself under the sway of the surviving Eastern Roman Empire, better known as Byzantium. From their magnificent capital in Constantinople, the Byzantine emperors sought to maintain the legacy of Rome, and their currency reflected this ambition. The solidus, a gold coin of remarkable purity, became the standard of international trade for centuries, but it was the more common bronze follis that circulated widely in the provinces, including Malta. These Byzantine coins represented a significant shift in iconography. The powerful, realistic portraits of the Roman emperors gave way to more stylized, otherworldly depictions. The emperor was often shown in full imperial regalia, holding a cross or an orb, symbols of his role as God's regent on earth. The reverse of the coins was frequently dominated by a large M, the Greek numeral for 40, indicating its value of 40 nummi. These coins were physical manifestations of a new world order, one where imperial power was inextricably linked with the authority of the Christian Church. For the people of Malta, they were a daily reminder of their place within this new Christian empire. This period of Byzantine rule, however, was not to last. In 870 AD, a new power expanding with fervent energy from North Africa seized the islands. The arrival of the Aghlabid Arabs marked one of the most profound transformations in Malta's history. The island's language, culture, and, of course, its currency were all set on a new course. The Christian symbols of the Byzantine follies were replaced by the elegant Arabic script and abstract designs of Islamic coinage. the gold dinar and the silver dirham, currencies of the vast and sophisticated Islamic world, now became the measures of wealth in Malta. Islamic coins were fundamentally different from their predecessors. In accordance with religious principles prohibiting graven images, they featured no portraits of rulers. Instead, their surfaces were filled with intricate Kufic script, quoting verses from the Quran and stating the name of the ruling caliph and the date and place of minting. This made them incredibly valuable historical documents. Coins found in Malta from this period, particularly the distinctive quarter dinars or rubai, tell a story of a thriving economy deeply integrated into the trade networks of the southern Mediterranean, connecting Malta with Sicily, North Africa, and the Levant. The Arab period left an indelible mark on Malta, most notably in its language, which remains Semitic at its core. While the Christian faith would eventually return as the dominant religion, the influence of these centuries under Islamic rule is undeniable. The discovery of hoards of Arab coins speaks to a period of prosperity and commercial activity. They tell of a time when Malta was a vital link in a different sphere of influence, looking south and east rather than north. The abstract beauty of the dinar and dirham represents a completely different worldview, one that valued the word of God over the image of an emperor, forever embedding a new layer into the rich, complex identity of the Maltese Islands. So, the pendulum of power in the Mediterranean swung once more in the year 1091, when the Norman knight, Count Roger I of Sicily, landed in Malta. This event, you see, marked the beginning of the island's re-Christianization and its long political union with Sicily, a bond that would shape its destiny for the next 4 centuries. The arrival of the Normans brought an end to Arab rule and initiated a gradual but profound change in the island's currency. The Islamic coins, with their sacred inscriptions, were slowly phased out, replaced by the coinage of the new Christian rulers of Sicily. The Normans and their successors, the Swabians and the Angevins, did not establish a separate mint in Malta. Instead, the island adopted the currency that was being produced in the great Sicilian mints of Palermo and Messina. This coinage was a fascinating hybrid, reflecting the multicultural kingdom the Normans had forged. Early Norman coins, known as, were large copper pieces that often continued to use Arabic script alongside Latin inscriptions and Christian symbols. This was a pragmatic approach, designed to ensure the coins were accepted by a population that was still culturally diverse. Under the Swabian dynasty, particularly the brilliant Holy Roman Emperor Frederick II, Sicilian coinage reached a new height of artistic and technical excellence. Frederick, known as the Wonder of the World, was a great patron of the arts and sciences, and his coinage reflected his imperial ambitions. He introduced the magnificent gold, a coin that consciously revived the style and quality of the Roman aureus. Featuring a classical-style bust of the emperor and a Roman eagle, it was a powerful statement of his claim to be the heir of the Caesars. While these high-value gold coins were rare, the more common silver and billon coins of his reign would have certainly been used in Malta's markets. The subsequent rule of the French Angevins, beginning in the late 13th century, brought its own distinct numismatic flavor. Charles I of Anjou introduced a beautiful gold and silver coin that became the new standard. These coins were overtly Christian and French in their symbolism. They typically depicted the Annunciation scene, with the angel Gabriel and the Virgin Mary, and the coat of arms of both the Kingdom of Jerusalem and the House of Anjou. The circulation of these coins in Malta reinforced the island's position within a new European political framework, one dominated by the papacy and the powerful royal houses of France. Throughout this entire period, from the 11th to the 13th century, Malta was administered as a feudal appendage of Sicily. The coins used by its people were a constant reminder of this political reality. They bore the portraits and symbols of distant kings and emperors who ruled from Palermo or Naples. The transition from the Arabic script of the dinar to the Christian crosses and royal arms of the charts the island's journey back into the European cultural and religious mainstream. The money in a Maltese merchant's purse was Sicilian money, a clear and unambiguous symbol of the island's political subordination. The turbulent end of Angevin rule in Sicily, marked by the bloody revolt known as the Sicilian Vespers in 1282, ushered in a new era for Malta. The island, along with Sicily, passed into the hands of the Crown of Aragon, a powerful maritime kingdom based in eastern Spain. For the next 2.5 centuries, Malta's fate would be tied to that of this expanding Iberian power. This political shift was, naturally, reflected in the currency that circulated on the island. The French-influenced coins of the Angevins were gradually superseded by those of the Aragonese kings. The monetary system under the Aragonese remained tied to Sicily. Coins struck in Messina and Palermo continued to be the main currency of Malta. However, the designs changed to reflect the new rulers. The coat of arms of Aragon, with its distinctive vertical red and yellow stripes, became a common feature. The primary silver coin of this period was a denomination that had ancient roots in the Arab period, but was now thoroughly Christianized. Alongside it circulated smaller coins, such as the billon and the copper, which were used for everyday transactions. Life in Aragonese Malta was often precarious. The island was a feudal backwater, frequently granted by the Aragonese crown to various noblemen as a fiefdom. It was also constantly under threat from corsairs and pirates operating from the North African coast. The coins of this era, therefore, represent a period of relative stagnation and vulnerability. They were not the products of a great imperial mint at the height of its power, but the functional currency of a remote and often neglected outpost. Finding these coins today gives us a sense of the daily economic life of the islanders during a long and often difficult period. With the union of the crowns of Aragon and Castile in the late 15th century, the newly forged Kingdom of Spain became the dominant power in the Western Mediterranean. Malta, still tied to Sicily, now found itself part of the vast Spanish Empire. Spanish coins, particularly the famous silver, began to circulate with greater frequency alongside the Sicilian issues. These coins, bearing the portraits of Ferdinand and Isabella, and later the powerful Habsburg emperors, were the currency of a global empire, connecting Malta to the immense wealth flowing from the newly discovered Americas. This long period of Aragonese and Spanish rule, while economically unremarkable for Malta itself, was crucial in one respect. It solidified the island's European Catholic identity. The coins, whether Sicilian or Spanish in origin, were all part of the same Christian European monetary system. They bore the symbols of Catholic monarchs and the sign of the cross. This deeply ingrained identity would prove to be of paramount importance when, in 1530, the Spanish Emperor, Charles V, made a decision that would forever change the destiny of Malta and bring about the most glorious chapter in its numismatic history. He granted the islands to a homeless order of crusading knights. In 1530, the history of Malta took a dramatic and decisive turn. The Knights of the Order of St. John, a military religious order driven from their previous stronghold on the island of Rhodes, were granted Malta as their new home. For the first time in over 1,000 years, Malta was to be governed by a resident sovereign power. One of the most significant privileges granted to the Grand Master of the Order was the right to mint his own currency. This was a powerful symbol of sovereignty, and it ushered in a golden age of Maltese coinage. Almost immediately, the Knights set about establishing a mint. The first coins were struck under Grand Master Philippe Villiers de l'Isle Adam, the very man who had led the Knights to Malta. These early coins were heavily influenced by the coinage of Rhodes and the systems of Sicily and Spain, ensuring they would be easily accepted. They were struck in gold, silver, and copper, with denominations like the, and the. Crucially, they bore symbols that were unique to the order, the 8-pointed cross, which would become forever known as the Maltese cross, and the coat of arms of the reigning Grand Master. For over 260 years, the Mint of the Knights produced a magnificent and unbroken series of coins. Each new Grand Master would issue currency bearing his own personal coat of arms alongside the cross of the order. This makes the coinage of the Knights a wonderfully complete historical record. We can trace the entire lineage of the rulers of Malta, from de l'Isle Adam to the final Grand Master, von Hompesch, simply by studying the coins. The portraits of the Grand Masters, which became a common feature from the 17th century onwards, give us a powerful personal connection to these men who shaped the island's destiny. The coins also tell the story of the Order's great triumphs and challenges. Following the epic victory of the Great Siege of 1565, the confidence and wealth of the Order grew immensely. This is reflected in the quality and quantity of the coinage. Magnificent gold and silver coins were struck to fund the building of the new capital city, Valletta, a fortress city designed to withstand any future attack. The coins from this period are often beautiful works of art, engraved by skilled masters and demonstrating the immense pride and power of the order. They were the currency of heroes, the money that built a city. The sheer variety of the knights' coinage is astounding. Denominations ranged from the tiny copper to the large and impressive silver and the magnificent gold 4 zecchini pieces. This complex system catered to every level of the economy, from the smallest purchase in the market to the vast sums required for international trade and military expenditure. For the Maltese people, using these coins every day was a constant affirmation of the order's rule. The face of the Grand Master and the cross of St. John were on every piece of money that passed through their hands, a tangible symbol of the unique state in which they lived. The long and storied rule of the Knights of St. John came to an abrupt and honestly pretty ignominious end in 1798. A new revolutionary power was sweeping across Europe, the France of Napoleon Bonaparte. On his way to conquer Egypt, Napoleon turned his attention to Malta. The order, already internally divided and in a state of decline, offered little resistance. In just a matter of days, the French were in control, and a new, radical, and ultimately short-lived chapter in Malta's monetary history began. The French immediately set about reforming the island's institutions, including its currency. The French authorities, driven by Republican ideology and desperate for funds to pay for their military expedition, viewed the assets of the order and the church as a source of wealth to be plundered. The Knights' Mint was taken over, and the existing monetary system was abolished. The historic gold and silver coins of the Grand Masters were systematically withdrawn from circulation. Tragically, vast quantities of precious metal, including priceless treasures from the island's churches and the silver plate of the Knights' auberge, were seized and melted down. This act of cultural vandalism was intended to erase the symbols of the old regime. The plan was to introduce the French decimal system, based on the franc and the centime. However, the occupation was to be so brief and chaotic that this was never fully realized. Instead, facing a shortage of currency and needing to pay their troops, the French resorted to issuing an emergency coinage. They used the copper they had on hand, and perhaps even metal from melted-down church bells, to strike a new series of coins. These pieces were crudely made, a stark contrast to the fine coinage of the knights they replaced. They were purely functional, stripped of any artistic or religious sentiment. These French occupation coins are fascinating for their austerity. They typically feature Republican symbols, such as the Phrygian Cap of Liberty, and inscriptions like République Française. They were struck in denominations that corresponded to the old system of the knights, such as 30 tari pieces, to make them somewhat familiar to the local population. However, the Maltese people, deeply Catholic and resentful of the French looting of their churches, viewed this new currency with suspicion and hostility. The coins were a symbol of a godless foreign occupation. The French presence in Malta lasted only 2 years. Their harsh rule provoked a widespread insurrection by the Maltese people, who, with British and Neapolitan assistance, besieged the French garrison in Valletta. During the siege, the Maltese rebels themselves issued their own emergency currency, often simple blocks of silver stamped with their value, to facilitate trade in the areas under their control. The French finally surrendered in 1800, bringing this brief, brutal interlude to a close. The crude copper coins they left behind are rare and honestly rather poignant relics of a traumatic period of upheaval and a testament to the resilience of the Maltese people. With the departure of the French in 1800, Malta fell under the protection of Great Britain, a relationship that was formalized by the Treaty of Paris in 1814. This marked the beginning of a new, 150-year-long colonial era. Malta's strategic importance as a naval base in the Mediterranean made it the jewel of the British Empire's maritime crown. The island's monetary system once again underwent a period of significant change as it was slowly but surely integrated into the vast and powerful sterling currency area. Initially, a confusing mix of currencies circulated. The remaining silver coins of the Knights of St. John were still in use, alongside the coinage of the Kingdom of Sicily and various other European and Spanish-American dollars. To bring order to this chaos, the British gradually introduced their own currency. The familiar pennies, shillings, and pounds of Great Britain became commonplace in the streets of Valletta and the three cities. For much of the 19th century, Malta operated on a dual currency system, with both local and British money being accepted. In 1855, a proclamation was issued making British sterling the sole legal tender of the islands. The historic coins of the Knights were finally withdrawn from circulation, marking the end of a monetary tradition that had lasted for centuries. From this point on, the coins used in Malta were identical to those used in London, Manchester, or, well, any other part of the British Empire. The portrait of the reigning British monarch, Queen Victoria, King Edward VII, King George V, became the face of money in Malta. This was a powerful symbol of the island's colonial status, a daily reminder that ultimate authority rested with a distant sovereign. However, the story of British-era currency in Malta has a unique and I think fascinating footnote. The local population had long been accustomed to the grano, the smallest copper coin of the Knights. The smallest British coin, the farthing, was worth 3 times as much as a grano, which was inconvenient for small, everyday purchases. To solve this problem, in 1827, the British government authorized the striking of a special coin exclusively for use in Malta, the 1/3 farthing. This tiny bronze coin, equivalent in value to the old grano, was a remarkable concession to local custom. The 1/3 farthing is perhaps the most emblematic coin of the British period in Malta. It was struck intermittently for over 80 years, bearing the effigy of the British monarch on one side and the figure of Britannia on the other. It was a British coin in every respect, yet it existed only because of a uniquely Maltese requirement. It perfectly encapsulates the nature of British rule in Malta, an overarching imperial system that was nevertheless willing, on occasion, to adapt to the specific needs and traditions of its colonial subjects. It was the smallest denomination in the entire British Empire, a tiny coin for a tiny but vital colony. The 20th century was a period of immense change for the British Empire, and for Malta. The island's heroic role during the Second World War, for which it was awarded the George Cross, strengthened its national identity and fueled a growing desire for self-determination. This long journey culminated on the 21st of September, 1964, when Malta gained its independence, becoming a sovereign nation within the Commonwealth. This momentous political change demanded an equally significant symbol of statehood, a new national currency. For the first few years of independence, Malta continued to use British coins, a practical necessity during the transition period. However, the creation of a truly Maltese currency was a high priority for the new government. In 1972, this ambition was realized with the introduction of the Maltese pound, known as the lira in Maltese. This was not just a change of name, it was a complete break from the colonial past. For the first time since the Knights of St. John, coins were issued that were designed by and for the people of Malta, reflecting the identity and aspirations of the new nation. The first series of coins, issued in 1972, was a powerful statement of this newfound sovereignty. The coins no longer bore the portrait of a foreign monarch. Instead, they were adorned with symbols that were deeply rooted in Maltese history and culture. The design celebrated the island's rich heritage, from its prehistoric past to its modern industries. This was a currency that told the story of Malta. The people of Malta could now hold in their hands coins that were unambiguously their own, a tangible representation of their independence. The designs chosen for this inaugural series were carefully selected to foster a sense of national pride. The bronze Mills coins featured a Neolithic temple altar, connecting the new nation to its ancient roots. The Cupro nickel cents coins depicted iconic Maltese imagery, a gozo boat, a traditional symbol of maritime life, the Great Siege Monument, honoring the island's heroic past, and a representation of agriculture, celebrating the land and its produce. The highest denomination coin, the 50 cents, featured the emblem of Malta itself. This new coinage was more than just a medium of exchange. It was a daily lesson in national history and a celebration of Maltese identity. It marked a psychological shift, a moving away from the colonial mindset. The replacement of the British monarch's effigy with local symbols was a clear and powerful declaration that Malta was now the master of its own destiny. These coins, circulating through every part of the island's economy, were a constant, reassuring presence, affirming the reality of independence in the hands and pockets of every citizen. While the introduction of the Maltese pound in 1972 was a landmark moment, The currency system itself was a curious hybrid. It retained the old British-style system of 240 pence to the pound, a complex and increasingly archaic structure in a world that was rapidly moving towards decimalization. The United Kingdom had decimalized its own currency in 1971, and it was clear that Malta would need to follow suit to modernize its economy and simplify transactions. The decision was made to adopt a full decimal system. The same year the new coins were introduced, 1972, Malta began its transition to decimalization. The pound, or lira, was now divided into 100 cents, and each cent was further subdivided into 10 mils. This created a three-tier system, with coins for mils, cents, and the lira. The new mils coins, with values of 2, 3, and 5 mils, were struck in aluminium and were among the smallest and lightest coins in circulation anywhere in the world. They were designed to allow for precise pricing and to ease the transition from the old pence and shilling system. This decimal system, with its mils, cents, and lira, remained in place for over a decade. It was a period of consolidation for the young nation, and the currency reflected this. However, by the 1980s, inflation had rendered the tiny mils coins impractical for everyday use, and they were gradually withdrawn from circulation. This paved the way for a second, more streamlined series of decimal coins, which was introduced in 1986. This new set of coins would become the definitive currency of the Maltese lira for the remainder of its existence. The 1986 series represented a fresh and modern design aesthetic. The coins, ranging from 1 cent to 1 lira, were created by the Maltese artist Noel Galea Basin. They continued the tradition of celebrating the nation's unique heritage. The 1 cent coin featured the altar from the prehistoric temple of Menasdra, linking back to the very first series. Other coins depicted the Maltese wall lizard, a native species, the freshwater crab, highlighting the importance of conservation, and the lampuki fish, a staple of the local diet and fishing industry. The designs were elegant, distinctive, and deeply Maltese. The crowning glory of this series was the new 1 lira coin. It was a large nickel brass coin featuring the national personification Melita, holding a rudder, symbolizing Malta taking control of its own destiny. This powerful image, based on a sculpture by Antonio Ciortino, became an iconic symbol of the modern Maltese Republic. This series of coins, from the humble 1 cent to the proud 1 lira, was the currency a generation of Maltese grew up with. It was the money of a confident, independent nation, proud of its past and looking firmly towards its future in a changing Europe. The turn of the millennium signaled a new ambition for Malta. Having established its independence and forged a modern identity, the nation set its sights on joining the European Union, a move that would embed it politically and economically within the heart of the continent. Membership was achieved in 2004, and with it came the commitment to eventually adopt the EU's single currency, the euro. This decision would mark the latest, and perhaps most profound, transformation in the island's long and varied monetary history. The process of preparing for the euro was a significant national undertaking. It involved aligning the economy, educating the public, and most excitingly, choosing the designs that would represent Malta on the new currency. Unlike previous currency changes imposed by foreign rulers, this was a democratic process. The Maltese public was invited to vote for the images that would feature on the national side of the euro coins. This was a unique opportunity for the people to decide how their nation would be presented to hundreds of millions of Europeans. The chosen designs beautifully encapsulate the essence of Malta's identity, drawing on themes that have echoed throughout our journey. For the 1, 2, and 5 cent coins, the design selected was the altar from the Menasdra temple complex. This choice anchors Malta's identity in its deep, prehistoric past, celebrating its status as home to some of the world's oldest freestanding structures. It's a symbol of ancient spirituality and enduring strength, a foundation stone of Maltese heritage. For the 10, 20, and 50 cent coins, the public chose the coat of arms of Malta. This emblem, showing a shield with the national flag, surmounted by a mural crown representing the island's fortifications, is a powerful symbol of the modern sovereign republic. It speaks of statehood, of the struggles for independence, and of the pride of a self-governing nation. It is a formal, official representation of Malta on the European stage. Finally, for the high-value 1 and 2 euro coins, the winning design was the iconic 8-pointed cross of the Order of St. John. This choice is a poignant acknowledgement of the immense historical and cultural legacy of the Knights. The Maltese cross is arguably the most internationally recognized symbol associated with the island. Its selection connects the modern euro with the golden age of Maltese coinage, bringing the numismatic story full circle. On the 1st of January 2008, the Maltese lira was replaced by the euro, and these three designs began to circulate not just in Malta, but across the entire Eurozone, tiny ambassadors of a small island with a very big history. From the simple barter of prehistoric villagers to the sophisticated borderless currency of the euro, the story of Malta's coins is a mirror to its soul. Each piece of metal we've examined is a chapter in a grand narrative, a tale of conquest and faith, of resilience and independence. We have held in our hands the propaganda of Roman emperors, the prayers of Arab calligraphers, the pride of the Knights of St. John, and the aspirations of a modern republic. These are not just inanimate objects. They are witnesses to history, passed down through countless hands, each one absorbing a trace of the era it served. The journey of Maltese currency is a testament to the island's extraordinary ability to adapt and absorb, to take the imprints of powerful empires and yet retain a core identity that is uniquely its own. The Phoenician merchant, the Roman centurion, the Norman knight, and the British sailor all used different coins on these shores, but the island itself endured, its character shaped but never erased by these successive waves of influence. The final transition to the euro is not an end to this story, but simply its latest evolution, a step that embeds Malta's identity into the pockets and purses of an entire continent. So the next time you hold a coin, any coin, take a moment to look closer. Consider the story it tells, the journey it has taken, and the history it represents. For in that small metal disc is a connection to the past, a symbol of the society that created it, and a legacy that continues to circulate among us. The coins of Malta offer us a particularly rich and compelling story, a tangible history of a small island nation at the very heart of the Mediterranean world. Thank you for joining me.